What's up there, guys? Thanks for tuning in. I'm Rick. This is Fanfare for the Conscious, and in the video today we're going to be asking, what is space-time? Let's dive in. So if this is your first time here, welcome to you. Thank you very much for joining me. This is going to be part 4 today of my guide to left brain spirituality. So if you've not seen any of those previous videos, then you might want to check the link up above to check out that playlist. I'm going to be adding the latest videos to that as I make them over time, so there will be plenty up there. At the moment there's 3 previous episodes, this is being the 4th one. So today we're asking, what is space-time? So space-time is a union of 2 separate concepts, which is the idea of space and the idea of time. Now these are actually intrinsically linked, which we will come into a little bit later. You can't in fact have one without the other, at least in the 3-dimensional realm which we're existing at the moment, and that we experience on this plane, so to speak. And this is going to tie in to ideas of the 0-point energy field and the Big Bang, and is going to be a jumping off point for an awful lot of videos in the future where we will go into some of these concepts in a little bit more detail to flesh out those ideas for you a little bit. So what is space? Well, space is the 3D realm in which we exist and that we perceive, and space is everywhere. A lot of people think of space as being this thing that is outside of the planet, that is the vacuum when we talk about space, the vacuum of outer space. But there is also an inner space within you as well, and we're not talking just within your body, though that is true. We're talking also within your mind, the place where there are no thoughts or fully structured ideas, a place of pure consciousness. And space does actually exist between atoms as well. So in the air that I'm breathing right now, between what we consider to be the molecules and the atoms of matter, there is space, which is not defined as being a particle or some other physical object. However, it is definitely not empty, and this is something that we're going to come on to a little bit later in the video. So you can really think of space as being the realm that we are existing within, the place where all the matter is produced and the place where all the events happen, so to speak. And speaking of events, we're coming on to the idea of time. And time is nothing but a measure of the continuous state of change in reality. That's all it is. It's an intellectual concept built out of the idea of us experiencing it in a given direction. Now, that's not to say that the only way to experience the universe is in a given direction. Like there are multiple ways to look at the frames of a film. You can experience them in the cinema, watching the frames go past piece by piece in a linear manner, or you could also be the projector operator who can have all the frames laid out in front of them and see them all as if they were happening simultaneously. Time is a function of our perception, as also is space. So time is every when. There was nothing before time and there will be nothing after time, because that would imply time. Basically, if you want to have something before time, then that doesn't make sense, because before is a function of time, as after is also a function of time. If you don't have time, then you can't have before and you can't have after. Therefore, there is nothing that exists outside of time. Time is every when, as space is everywhere. There can be nothing outside of space, because then it wouldn't be space. So Einstein unified the concepts of space and time with his theory of relativity. And you can't have one without the other. Can't imagine meeting somebody in a place without giving them a time. Events happen in places and in times. They are like two different degrees of coordinates of your location within existence. It's probably the most fundamental way to think about space-time as an XY coordinate system, whereby your coordinates in space and your coordinates in time, so three-dimensional space and, you know, two-dimensional, three-dimensional, who knows, time, if we're talking about multiple different universes and realms and all sorts of things like that, the dimensionality of time has got a big question mark over it. But regardless, imagine space as being a vibration and time as being a vibration, and those are just merely components of the description of your being. Everything that exists in a place and exists at a time. Therefore, it can be considered to be a function of that entity within itself, rather than an external manifestation of anything. So space-time itself is not empty, it is never empty, and the space between matter is actually full of electromagnetic energy. And if again, I'm going to refer back to my previous video, Left Brain Spirituality Part 3, Let There Be Light. Link's going to be dropped above for you there. Go and check that one out, because when we are talking about electromagnetic energy, you need to understand what it is I'm referring to. And what I'm effectively referring to is light. Space-time is not an empty nothingness. And in fact, in terms of energy, is more substantial than the material world. And even Einstein himself said this. Lots of people have tried to use the concept of space-time as a replacement for the ether, and a way by which we do not need to describe an ether or a quintessential element which binds all of the universe together. However, space-time itself is not an empty nothingness, because it has very distinguishable properties. It can be bent, it can be warped, it can be manipulated by matter. This is just simply shown by the explanation of gravity, which describes space-time as being a fabric which can be warped in 3 dimensions. And when you actually add up all of the energy that is available in, for example, a square centimetre of empty vacuum in which there is no matter, you can actually, and this will be covered in another video, discover that there is more energy, there is a greater energy density in that square centimetre of vacuum than there is in the entire universe in itself. And this brings us to the idea of the 0-point energy field. And the 0-point energy field is the ever-present oscillation of the fabric of space-time itself. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that scientists discovered, as mentioned in the ultraviolet catastrophe in my previous video, that when all other possible wavelengths were eliminated, that there was still an oscillation to be found at what should be the 0 point of space, where there should be nothing happening at all. And it was still found that once all of the measurable wavelengths were eliminated, that there was still provably something there, that there was still something boiling and bubbling at this very low energy level. And referring back to the ultraviolet catastrophe, if there truly is no lower limit to the electromagnetic spectrum, as was shown by the mathematics, then the energy density of the vacuum is actually effectively infinite, because that energy exists on an infinite number of wavelengths, and an infinite number of wavelengths and an infinite variety of different size wavelengths extending infinitely small produces an infinite amount of energy. Now, that's not to say that we would necessarily be able to tap that infinite amount of energy, because obviously, as discussed previously, there are limits to our ability to interact with this universe. There are upper and lower boundary conditions. The upper boundary condition is tied into the speed of light and our ability to perceive the universe. There's actually a limit to, there's a horizon, so to speak, to the universe, beyond which we cannot perceive any other events happening. An event horizon, you might say. The zero-point energy field was proven to exist by the Casimir experiment. And what happened in the Casimir experiment was that two plates were placed very close together. Okay? And when you do this in a medium which supports oscillations, and those two plates are placed very close together, they experience an inward force. And the best way for you to understand this would be to imagine two plates placed in water. Now there is a general oscillation to that water, there is movement, it is not perfectly still. And the closer you bring those plates together, the more wavelengths you eliminate. Because you can only have a wavelength that is smaller than the distance between those two plates, or at the very least equal to it. Thus, there are more oscillations happening outside of those plates than there are between the plates, and that produces a greater energy and a greater force on the outside of those plates. When you get them close enough together, they will actually experience a fairly significant inwards force. And you can do this in the bath with, a couple of little floating toys. If you've got them close enough together, then they should naturally be drawn together, because there is a greater amount of energy in terms of the waves outside of that closely placed structure than there is between it. So not only can this be done with vibrations in air, this can be done with vibrations in water, and this can also be done with vibrations in the vacuum. And again, we come back to this idea of a medium which supports those oscillations, tied back to my previous video right there, let there be light. So provably, the zero-point energy field, the vacuum of space itself, is a medium. It is not a nothingness. It is not insubstantial. It is capable of supporting vibrations and oscillations within it. So anytime anyone tries to tell you that space is empty, correct them, because it is not. It is full, and it is full of an unimaginable amount of energy. This brings us over to the Big Bang. And the Big Bang was not an explosion. It was, in fact, an expansion. And when taken with a mainstream explanation, everything which consists of the universe was contained at a single point and at a single moment. That single point and single moment of everything expanded. So since space and time did not exist. So, since space and time did not exist before this expansion created it, then all places must be here and all times must be now. Thank you very much for watching, if indeed you still are. If you did like this content, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up and the notification bell set to all. We'll make sure you're always kept up to date with all my videos, which are dropped on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays at 8 PM UK time. If you do want to join me over at lawfulbank.com and be part of the lawful people's assemblies, gatherings and conventions ready to replace the corrupt governmental systems of tyranny and oppression, then please go and sign up and start talking to me on the forums. Add me as a friend and I look forward to seeing you there. Take care of yourselves, guys. Don't forget to stay free, think free, and always act free. Don't worry, I'll see you next time.